is the systematic oppression.
Lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Belinda's channel. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload a video, you'll be the first person to be notified. And to my returning subscribers, thank you so much for all the love and support. You know, to those people that share my videos, you guys are the great MVP. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Let's get into this video. So lovelies, I came across this video on my For You page on TikTok, and I thought to share with you guys where this Asian American woman actually asked this one question to white people, and a lot of them actually came true, guys. I'm just going to roll the clip as well as the stitches I was able to put together. This actually involved people of color. But before then, please don't forget that this channel does not support any form of bullying, harassment, or whatsoever. We are just here for informative, educational purposes, guys. So please, leave your thoughts in the comment section and let's get into it.
So I'm going to go ahead and openly admit that I am completely ignorant about the white experience with racism, and I'm sure that is painfully obvious to a lot of you. Now, I know that I'm always telling other people, don't be lazy and entitled, the internet is free, look things up on your own, but it's not that I haven't tried to engage in my own research. I have literally searched, how do white people experience racism? And unfortunately, not a lot of information comes up. Most of it is articles questioning whether white people can experience racism, or articles about the myth of anti-white racism. However, I of all people know that the dominant narrative is not necessarily accurate because it is often pushing a harmful agenda. So because there is that dearth of information on the internet, I was wondering if you could please help me understand, how do white people experience racism, and what does experiencing racism look like from your perspective as a white person? And also, can you help me understand, if white people experience racism, why are there not more of you who are working to dismantle racism? Because what I've noticed is I'm often told that white people do experience racism without any specifics, and in the context of either gaslighting or upholding the racism that other people experience. Whereas with most people of the global majority, when we share similarities and differences in how we experience racism, we use that information to increase our work to dismantle racism. Whereas people like you seem to only bring it up to decrease that work.
I'm a professor of media studies, and my research focuses on race and pop culture. You have my attention.
Now, I know that I'm always...
So I'm not the person that this creator is responding to, and I realize that she is engaging in a rhetorical point. That being said, I think this is a good opportunity to talk about the ways in which that white folks are impacted adversely by racism. So the first thing to address is that the term racism has a lot of social cultural baggage associated with it. And honestly, it also has a couple different definitions that have been ascribed to it that make it kind of difficult to have a productive conversation around it. So let's get into what those two definitions are. So one definition associated with racism, which is a much more recent definition, is the idea of an interpersonal phenomenon wherein one person judges another person based on their perceived race and then attributes corresponding positive or negative traits. It's worth noting that this is a very colloquial use of the term, and it's a kind of definition you can find in a dictionary. And also, it's important to keep in mind that a dictionary is a reflection of how words are used, not a prescriber of how words should be used. The other definition, which is the original one, is that racism is the phenomenon of the reproduction of racial disparities and inequalities within a society through its structures and systems. And this concept has been maintained pretty consistently throughout academia, even as the concepts of race and racialization have been debated and evolved over time. It's kind of like the term intersectional. There is an academic understanding and a public use of the term, and the public use is significantly different. Anyway, if we want to talk about racism as an interpersonal phenomenon, then sure, anyone can experience it. That is race-based prejudice, and that is just another form of bigotry. But if we want to talk about this from a system and structural approach, which I would argue is more important, then we should look at the ways in which white people are negatively affected by pro-white racism. And that's going to involve looking at the negative consequences that people who complain about anti-whiteness don't typically discuss. Take, for example, lynchings. If you look at a photo of a lynching, let's say it's from the 1950s, you will, of course, see the desecrated remains of a person who has done a grave and violent injustice, more often than not, a person of color. And, of course, around them, you'll see white folks and often white children. Lynching exists at the intersection of personal prejudice and systemic racism. And obviously the most important thing about a lynching is the person whose life was taken. But secondary to that, and also a significant problem, is the fact that the people who took part in it were either desensitized or have become desensitized in the process. And what do you think it does to those kids? Those kids are being required to deny their own humanity so that they can deny the humanity of another person. And that is a trauma that has long-term psychological consequences, not just for those kids, but for everyone else in that community. And there are a couple other examples that really bring this into focus as well. One is community pools, and the other is home ownership. Once the process of integration began in the United States, it became common for communities that had public swimming pools to shut them down because they would rather deny that opportunity to everyone than allow black folks the chance to swim. In the case of home ownership, historically speaking, homes owned by black Americans have been undervalued by appraisers. This further drives down the value of other properties in those neighborhoods. And when you combine this with the phenomenon of white flight, where white Americans who had the means would relocate to other communities once black folks moved in, then what you have is a neighborhood where everyone's property values, white and black, are significantly decreased. And of course, this has implications for a lot of things, such as building generational wealth, because home ownership is a big part of that. And if your home isn't worth much, then your ability to generate wealth is greatly decreased. A lot of this boils down to the idea that rich and powerful white Americans as a class have been willing to sacrifice poor and middle-class white Americans as the collateral damage, as the acceptable losses in their efforts to oppress people of color. That is an excellent question.
Because
no notes.
Hey, Amy. Hi, white guy here. Thank you very much for asking that question. That's a really important question, especially for white people to ask. The reason that it's very hard to find the experience of white people experience racism is because it is systemically impossible for white people to experience racism. Let me explain. Racism, as opposed to mere bigotry, is the systematic oppression of people based on their skin color, ethnic origin, or a number of different types of factors that I, as a non-professional, do not have the expertise to go ahead and fully describe. But racism is a systemic thing. Racism is an artificial construct that has been created by wealthy people to go ahead and split the working class. And it has been spectacularly successful and has its roots in the very beginnings of capitalism, where things like the transoceanic slave trade and the triangle trade that took place at the beginning of the 17th century. There's all sorts of academic work on this subject. White people can experience bigotry, but white people certainly can't experience racism. Let's say, for example, I get stopped by a cop. Let's say, for example, I'm carrying an ounce of weed in my car. Unlike someone who's brown-skinned, or unlike somebody who does not fit the white heteronormative stereotype, I'm most likely going to go ahead and get let off with a pat on the head. There's an implicit understanding between police, law enforcement, the judicial system, and the mass of citizenry who is identified as white, that they have privilege, that they have a special pass. In exchange for supporting patriarchy and hierarchy and capitalism, people get special social considerations which actually have power. So the thing about racism is that whites are never in a position where they are being systemically oppressed because of their skin color, because they are the oppressors. White people can't experience racism. Now, white people can certainly experience bigotry, but the thing is that the effects of this bigotry are nowhere near what the average brown skin or yellow skin person experiences every day. For example, if I were to go ahead and show up knocking on somebody's door and have the cops called on me, I would not get shot down. Or odds are that I would not have nearly as much chance of getting shot down as, let's say, for example, examples of brown-skinned people going ahead and getting shot in their own apartments. Breonna Taylor, say her name. So that is one of the weird things about whiteness. And the funny thing about whiteness is that the target for whiteness shifts. There are times when certain people of European descent, certain Saltine people, don't get the full benefits of whiteness. But even those people are not targeted for racism because they are not specifically exploited for their skin color or subject to oppression. It is a very deep subject. I recommend that you go ahead and look up concepts such as James Baldwin's The Psychic Wages of Whiteness, and there's a whole bunch of other education that's out there. If you need help with sources, ping me. Stitch back my video, and I'll...
No, we don't. White people don't experience racism. We perpetuate it, as your comment does, but we don't experience racism. Do some more research. No, we don't.
I'm glad you asked this question because I'm white. And I can tell you I've never once experienced racism based on my color, my ethnicity. I've never experienced racism directed at me. I have experienced homophobia, transphobia. I've experienced things like that, but never racism. I don't think that there is a white person out there on the face of this planet that can explain how they feel when they have been the victim of racism, because I don't believe that that's a thing. I don't. The only time I've experienced racism has been as a third party. And quite frankly, seeing it as a third party makes me fucking sick. And whenever I do see it, I say something, because, that's what a good human should do. But as far as experiencing racism directed at myself, no, that's never happened. And I don't believe that there is a person out there that can tell you that it has happened to them. So I hope that was helpful.
You're essentially presupposing that everybody that can experience racism is going to experience racism universally in one way, depending on their racial group. But I don't think this is the best way to look at it. See, not even all black people experience racism in the same way. Not all Latinos, not all Asians, not all Pacific Islanders. So to attempt to Google this subjective experience when it comes to white people, and then to blame your lack of reason on the lack of Google search evidence, it just seems a bit naive. It feels like if you were to say, a man told me today that men can actually be sexually assaulted as well within this patriarchal society. And not just by other men, but by other women. He even told me that he had experienced this himself. I looked him dead in his face and I said, I don't know. Let me look this up on Bing. I will say, this lady does seem like she's coming from a genuine place of confusion and curiosity. So in all seriousness, if you genuinely want something to ponder on, this is what I would ask you. In terms of someone being mixed with black and white, do you believe that biracial individuals can experience racism? If so, do you believe that them being criticized for presenting and acting too black or presenting and acting too white would be an example of this racism? If a white person told this individual that they're acting too black and that they're not white enough, this would be them being antagonistic by using their preconceived notions of what a black person is and what a white person should be. In the same way, I believe a black person telling this individual that they're too white or that they're not black enough is them being antagonistic using their preconceived notions of what a white person universally is and what a black person universally should be. If we can acknowledge that this biracial individual is experiencing racism on both sides of the spectrum, aka anti-blackness as well as anti-whiteness, then why can't we apply that same capacity for experience to black and white individuals outside of being biracial?
Hey, how's it going? I just wanted to say, go back and watch his video. It's decent, Well, first to him, I would just like to say, don't be too critical. Googling something is an excellent way to do some research, because people do document a lot of things, especially stuff of that nature, rational or irrational, through journals or Reddit posts, usually through digital means. Sorry about that. I had a little writer's block. Or would it be considered video block? I don't know. Whatever, let's get back to my point. I mean, from my point of view, I think everyone experiences racism, black, white, etc. I mean, hell, it's like some black people are racist against black people. It's like, just like Chris Rock says, black people are prejudiced against black people. That's his stuff in the early 90s. You need to really check that out. Anyway, man, I'm sorry for blabbing on. Just gonna end this video, and I'm probably just gonna go back to your page and check out some more of yours because, I like being entertained. Yeah, you take care, man.
Like, seriously, lovely. Sometimes I feel that these pan-colored people also want to be, oppressed. They also want to feel oppressed. They also want to know how it feels to be oppressed. So this favorite TikTok of mine, happens to talk about, black people related topics, race and cis, and things that is happening in general. And a lot of people have been leaving comments on her section trying to okay, because she have got some, white followers as well. She often talk about how oppressed, people of color is, and how to, eradicate this thing that has been going on for years and the way forward. And now, someone in her comment section who happens to be a pan-colored person left this on her section, also trying to, tell her that people of color or pan-colored people also experience race and cis. And this actually got me thinking. When I saw this I was like, okay, if they experience race and cis, how do they experience this race and cis? Then she went ahead to, reply the comments and ask this question, like, maybe she's ignorant just the way I am also ignorant, because I want to know how these colored people, experience racism. She went ahead to ask this question, directing it to, pan-colored people and also people in general, which a lot of them, replied. And to, crown it all, it's as if there is no straight answer to if these pan-colored people actually experience racism or not. If they actually experience racism or not. But one thing is for sure is that the reverse racism card is often pulled by white people when people of color call out racism and discrimination or create spaces for themselves that white people aren't a part of. The impulse behind the reverse racism argument seems to be a desire to prove that people of color don't have it that bad. They are not the only ones that are put at a disadvantage or targeted because of their race. It's like racism Olympics. Stereotypes and assumptions about white people do exist. This is considered racial prejudice, not racism. Racial prejudice refers to a set of discriminatory or derogatory attitudes based on assumptions derived from perceptions about race and or skin color. So as racial prejudice can indeed be directed at white people. That's why people can dance. When we say that white people can dance, they can rap, or they actually can do a lot of things. So that's what they actually consider as, racism when they tell you that white people actually, experience racism and all of that. But it's not considered racism because of the systemic relationship to power. When backed up with power, prejudice results in acts of discrimination and oppression against group or individual. When a group of people has little or no power over you, they don't get to define the terms of your existence. They can't limit your opportunities, and you needed not to worry much about the use of a law to describe you and yours, since in all likelihood, this loss is as far as it's going to go. So saying that white people actually experience racism is something like it's a myth, Is that something that it's not even possible, because racism has nothing to do with feelings. It's a measurable reality that white people are not subjected to, regardless of their incomes or status. So no matter how they are, they cannot be raised and seized towards. There's this reverse racism, which happens to be a myth because it attempts to ignore the power privilege dynamic between the individuals or group involved. The myth of reverse racism assumes that racism occurs on a so-called level playing field, when in actuality it does not. One claim of reverse racism that is often made is in relation to affirmative action programs that were created to help ensure that non-white individuals are given equal consideration and opportunities, whether it is in regards to employment, school, or scholarship. For white individuals, programs such as this might feel like something is being taken away from them. Blair outlines how white people often believe deserving white students are discriminated against, while academically unqualified students are given highly coveted college or company positions just because they happen to tick the ethnic minorities box. This argument ignores the fact that affirmative action did not come out of nowhere. There was a need for a system that would address the decades of underrepresentation of people of color, both academically and in the job world. Affirmative action programs are attempts to repair the result of institutionalized racism by setting guidelines and establishing procedures to find qualified applicants from all segments of population. In other words, these programs do not privilege people of color, but are an attempt to level the not so level playing field that has historically privileged a certain types of candidates. So you see, and this affirmative action actually favored white people. They favor white women the most, but most times they feel that affirmative action is the bridge to race and cis and all of that, which is not. So I don't see a way where this man would say that white people actually experience racism. In all ramifications, they did not. And I was so glad, seeing their stitches, when these women actually asked these questions. Some of them actually came out to give their genuine answer without trying to beat around the bushes or try to make it feel as if that okay, we also experience race and cis and all of that. There is a stitch I actually saw when someone was talking about how so many people of color so many white people try to reverse it, like the reverse racism I just explained earlier on. They want to feel that okay, they are also experiencing racism, but that actually is not a race and cis. So guys, why not just leave me your own thoughts in the comment section of what you think of this video. This is just my 1 cent of what I think of the video, and do not forget that this channel, we do not support any form of bullying, harassment, or whatsoever. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. And if you have not subscribed to my channel or to this extent, please do your girl a huge favor to do that. Turn on notification bell so that anytime I upload a video, you will be the first person to be notified. I also want to use this medium to tell you guys that I have another channel where I do more things about relationships, chat by trans women. It's actually a backup channel, which sometimes I'll just share videos on my community. So why not just also check it out? You might actually like stuff there. Also subscribe if you love what I'm doing there as well. And thank you so much for all the love and support so far on this channel. And I will see you lovelies when I upload my next. If you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to please leave me your own thoughts in the comment section of what you think of this video. And do not forget that this channel, we do not support any form of bullying, harassment, or whatsoever. We are just here for educational and informative purposes. So why not, share this video, leave your thoughts, subscribe if you're yet to do that. And I will see you lovelies when I upload my next video.